We've done 350 appointments, SAT appointments. We're on track to do 85 million.
Your first property you sold was a $36,000 foreclosure that you worked your butt off to make $800. For someone who doesn't understand the YouTube algorithm and how it feeds the video, can you talk to that?
I have sat in the room and listened to the people talk who actually build the machine. The reality of it is that machine's primary goal is to serve you and I the thing that we want. They said, replace the word algorithm with people. Oh, it's the algorithm's fault. The algorithm is a person. Yeah, it's a machine, but the algorithm's only sole focus is to deliver the person the best possible experience. So a property like this, for an example, I think most builders would love to, you to come in and just feature this home. Give me a 7-minute video, hired the crew to come in and do it. You know what it did? Nothing. But when we take that same property tour and embed it in a, hey, let me show you what's happening here in St. Pete. First, the appointments start coming. The vlog style videos, even though they may not be the most fancy thing in the world, because I've done both. And the funny thing is the rawer it is, the realer people respond. This whole thing that you're seeing in front of this experiment right now came out of one of those failures. In 2017, I lost my corporate position. And then when COVID came, we went from doing well enough to no income in our house for 93 days.
Your first property you sold was a $36,000 foreclosure that you worked your butt off to make $800. And now this year, you've had over 285 Zoom consultations. So just for context for anyone who's watching and why they should continue watching, can you tell people kind of like the business results, like the back end of like the leads, the business as a result of what you built on YouTube?
You've done your homework. That's funny. Yeah, $36,000. It was a very interesting time in real estate. 2012, I got licensed. So like, technically at the bottom, I pushed up. I had an agent who was trying to get me in the business for like a year. She actually worked for me when I was in the restaurant business. And I was like, you out of your mind. Like, things aren't selling. Like, that's crazy. I can't imagine getting into that. She would give me leads because she was paying Trulia at the time, which Zillow acquired years later, for leads. And at that point, literally, if you were on those platforms, the phone rang. It was usually somebody buying a house. What she would do is she was just taking everything that was easy and closing it, and anything that was left over that wouldn't respond to her, she would send my way, and I would just work it. And I needed to make more money. I was in a situation, and I was like, I got to make more money. So finally, she convinced me to come in, but she made that deal with me. Anything less than 85 grand, I paid her 25%, and anything more than 85 grand, I paid her 35%. That was the deal we made. So that very first property was a foreclosure. And it was Fannie owned, government owned, and 36 grand. And we walked in the door. All the lady had to do is get the power on and move in.
So can you give a little color into like maybe how many leads per year or per month you generate from YouTube now?
Good question. Well, we've done 350 appointments, SAT appointments. Probably had 10 or 15 close. I'm not super dialed in on that specific number, but cancel. Or reschedule or something along those lines. But we've sat 350 appointments so far. We're on track to do 85 million as a team between the two states. A majority of that is in Tampa. A lot of referral business, and we'll still do over 6 figures in GCI from YouTube in Detroit. Yeah, majority of that business comes from YouTube, is generated here, which is incredible. It's been amazing, to say the least.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, so this starts to tie into like, most people are wondering like, what do I create? What do I post? And you have a great quote that you said, professional marketers don't worry at the bottom of the funnel. They look and build for the top of the funnel. And then a lot of realtors, they want to build for the bottom of the funnel.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that?
Well, that's something I learned from Russell Brunson, right? Russell says amateurs focus on the front end, right? Or at the bottom end, and then professionals focus on the top end. And what he meant by that is like, if you look at a sales funnel and how it's designed, the most, everybody wants at the bottom of the funnel business, which it absolutely should. There's nothing wrong with that. But because of we're not taught how to run businesses typically, not in high school and even in college, I can argue that some things are broken there. But most people think, okay, I need business. And the reason that we think this way is because we need it.
Yeah.
We need the business now. So where's the business now? It's all at the bottom of the funnel. Those are the people transacting. The problem is that's a red ocean, right? Everybody's there. So when you're maybe not as skilled as another person in your marketplace, or you don't have the resources, it gets really difficult, right? That's a red ocean for a reason. So when you understand that you don't have to, you can get that bottom end by focusing up top, that's when things really start to change. And Russell exposed me to that. And at that point in my life, I didn't know that marketing was happening to me. As a lot of people, we love to sit here and have bravado about, well, people don't get to tell me what I'm going to buy and all this other stuff, but it's happening to us every day. And when you actually see somebody show you how professionals operate those businesses, you're like, oh, there's a path. And I thought, my decisions in the grocery store or my decisions in the Amazon cart, I thought that was for me and my decision, but ultimately I was led there. When you really learn that if I invest at the top, ultimately it will create its own bottom. It just takes a little bit longer, especially organic. You can speed it up through paid marketing if you want to go that route. But when you do organically, it's going to take more time than everybody else. But by the time you get there, no one else can compete with you.
I want to get into what videos make sense for agents to create versus not make sense, because you have this bucket strategy. You know what you're creating and why you're creating and who you're creating it for. I'm sure you sometimes hear there's two sides to it. One is, I want to create how to buy a home, how to sell a home, all those educational real estate topics.
Yep.
So can you talk to that? And does that work? Is it worth creating?
Does that content work? Yes. The real question that you always want to ask is, who do I want to serve? Who do I want my ideal client? This is, if I could go back and do it again, Andrew, I wish somebody would just held my feet to the fire. And this happens to, I think, most people in business. This isn't exclusive to real estate, right? We're all like, hey, I could do a thing. So that means anyone who wants this thing is who I should want. But ultimately, it leads to a lot of pain and frustration, because we're always chasing the next deal, chasing the next person, because we haven't built relationships. And my framework is very simple. I have to get people to watch. Right. I have to keep them watching so I can build a relationship, and I have to make them an offer. Those are the only three things that I do. And anything outside of that is just noise. It's simple, but it's not easy, because you got to do the work. Right. And when you focus on the who rather than how do I get them? Now, who is it that I'm talking to? What content do they need built? What fears, what concerns do they have? Right. Because you said, if it's a buyer, if you're trying to attract buyers, for an example, and let's just say that they're moving to your area and they're not hyper local and they don't know everything about the area. What are the questions, the fears, concerns that almost all of them have? Well, we all have the same ones, right? We want to live in a safe, secure environment, right? We want to have a place where we can grow and feel good about our community. And we want a place where we can see ourselves going into the future. Those are the things. We actually don't want houses. It has nothing to do with a house. It has everything to do with a lifestyle. Right. And most people just don't recognize that.
Yeah. And you made a really good point with getting people to watch is the idea, the topic, and then title and thumbnail. Mm-hmm. When I kind of looked at a lot of your content, I kind of bucketed it. One was kind of the reality check bucket. And those do really well, sometimes come off negative. Then second is kind of cost analysis. Third is area deep dives, neighborhoods, location, and then the other one's lifestyle. So when you think through your buckets, what's different than that? And then I want to talk about the reality check, because a lot of people don't love making that stuff too.
Yeah, that's funny. And I wouldn't call it the reality. We call it something different, but I like the term there. That's really good. Yeah. So we have 5 buckets. What I looked at early on was what is working for people, what isn't. When you see somebody doing something, go get in their world, right? Get in their funnel, get on their email list, click on all the videos, go do all the things, and then go look at it, and you'll start to see the patterns that are there in front of you, right? And what I recognized early on is straight property tours do terrible, right? On YouTube specifically, they just don't do well from a view perspective. But what I didn't know then that I know now. It doesn't matter. The view count is a vanity metric in YouTube for real estate, right? I'm not Mr. Beast. We're never going to be Mr. Beast. Real estate content is probably not going to do 300 million views on a video.
Yeah.
That's not its focus. You only need one, right? You only need one client to reach out or one person to make the offer on the house. So when you start making the content for one person, that's when things really started to change for us. So we started to recognize that the property tours are cool, but you know what really gets people going is a property tour that's embedded in a community style video, right? Well, we take that same property tour and embed it in a, hey, let me show you what's happening here in St. Pete first. The appointments start coming. The vlog style videos, even though, you know, they may not be the most fancy thing in the world, because I've done both. And the funny thing is that the rawer it is, the realer people respond.
Yeah.
But understanding, I'm listening to how the audience is responding.
Yeah.
Right. And they respond with their watch time. They don't respond with their click necessarily. That's only phase one, right? Like I need them to watch the video. Right. I got to build a relationship with them in real estate or I can't win. So pros and cons, top, whatever, you know, you said lifestyle, the community-based tours, property tours do go in that mix, right? These are the heavy focus there, and cost of living, right? So like those are our 5 buckets. If you go look at my channel, that's what it is. And the negative, what was the comment? You
like reality check?
Yeah, reality check. And remember, people are afraid of making a mistake. So when you come in that way and you give a title that is like, hey, what they're not telling you about living in X, which if you've been on my channel, you've seen that video 3, 4, 5 times up there, right? That it seems negative, but when you come in and you show them, hey, this is why this perception is here, but here's the reality. Well, some of this reality isn't pretty, but here's how you overcome it. That's what builds that trust and relationship.
Thinking of like the home tours and like wrapping that in. Like I kind of said that's like a lifestyle home tour. It's like you sell the area, then you sell the house. So have you tested, like, do you do house first, area first, or flip flop?
Area first, then the house.
Okay.
Yeah. Put it later. We've done it both ways. They won't stick around long enough or they'll skip over the content. In the property tour first, coming into the community tour afterwards. But if you start with the community focus and draw them in that way, they'll stay around and now they're intrigued to know, right? Because our minds are heat-seeking missiles, man. Maxwell Maltz says this in Psycho-Cybernetics. He talks about how we have to solve problems. Well, what you're really doing there is you're embedding curiosity.
And I think that's a huge thing. If like more agents sold the lifestyle, sold the area for their listing, because it's like, at the end of the day, you work with a handful of buyers and you know they're not just searching in one neighborhood.
Yep.
They want to be in that neighborhood, but they're looking at multiple. So I think that's just like a huge opportunity.
I think a lot of listing agents are stepping over dollars chasing dimes. If they're sleeping on YouTube, especially if they look at this and go, well, that's a living in brand. Well, you've already interviewed Ken. You already know that the listing opportunities are coming from what he's already done.
Yep.
But the other thing that most people don't recognize is when I list a house and I put it inside of an area tour like that, I'm hosting an open house that at least 12 to 1,500 people are going to go through. You cannot touch me, right? If we're sitting in a living room together and the seller's like, well, what's the advantage of going with you over me? Go ahead, pull up your channel and show me how many people have walked through this home.
The next order of creating the video is like, so how do I push the video out? How do I get other people to see the video? But as you know, YouTube doesn't push the videos. So for someone who doesn't understand the YouTube algorithm and how it feeds the video, can you talk to that?
In the largest listing attraction experiment in real estate history, over 2,500 agents participated and generated 20,000 listing appointments, which actually attributed to over 7.5 billion in closed business for agents. That is the power of listing leads in action. We send over 25 hyper-local newsletters, but you actually need to start conversations so you can generate more appointments. What to send, how to say it. That is why listing leads does all the work for you. You can just literally copy and paste and send. If you join today, use the code Andrew. Not only do you get a free trial, but I hooked our subscribers up with 50% off. For less than a cup of coffee a day, you can generate your own listing. Click the link in the description today if you want to generate your next listing. Now back to the show.
Well, first of all, I'm not the expert on it. But I will say this, I have sat in the room and listened to the people talk who actually build the machine, right? So I've been to Vid Summit and a lot of conferences where, some of these wonderful people who are in the engineering team have talked to this specifically. At the end of the day is that machine is just, its primary goal is to serve you and I, the thing that we want. And, they said, replace the word algorithm with people. And the first time I heard that, I was like, yeah, that's not how I act. Right? I love to like, oh, it's the algorithm's fault, or it's the algorithm didn't do this. And that's not, the algorithm is a person, right? Yeah, it's a machine, but the algorithm's only sole focus is to deliver the person the best possible experience. The people, the way that they respond is based upon their behavior, right? And behavior is different than clicks, right? That's one component of it. Just like a like on Facebook, right? It has a value, but it's not the highest value, right? Instagram, are we connecting with each other, right? Then the algorithm wants to keep us together, right? Why? Because people want to connect. So that's what it's doing. And when you start to focus on that and you understand, okay, I'm making this for a person. What would this person want to hear about this thing? Our average watch time on our channel is 8 minutes.
That's good.
It's really good, right? And for us, we're focused on that first 30 seconds, right? And I've learned this from Mr. Beast and Daryl Leaves and all the guys doing the YouTube thing, but like that first 30 seconds is so important. If I can keep people retained, 75%, that's our goal. If I keep 75% of the people in that first 30 seconds, the video is going to win. It's just going to unlock and it's going to go.
So when you think of who you're creating it for and how to think through that as like an agent, is it like the topic? Is it the area? Like, how do you start thinking like, okay, this content is going to get me move up buyers and stuff like that?
Yeah. The cool thing about marketing is you can design a message for a very specific individual or group of people as opposed to being very broad. But I'll give you an example, right? I can't say that Tampa is safe. I can't say that St. Pete is safe. I literally cannot say that on camera, right? That would be in violation of our code of ethics. However, I can direct you to the information. I can show literally public domain. I can jump in there and show you niche.com and the rankings of safety. Did I have to say it? No. If I'm talking about schools, who most likely is the ideal client on the other side of that? Right? If I'm talking about how a place focuses on safety and it ranks really high in safety, who am I most likely having a conversation with on that, right? Who is the person that I'm talking to? It's not complicated. You just have to understand how would you and I talk if we were those people, right? If you want to sell country club houses, you can't talk about, hey, this is the country club. Well, that's cool. That'll get someone like aware, but they want to know the nitty gritty. They want to know what's going, like, what does it really take? How long is the waiting list? Like, those things are important. And that person knows that you're actually speaking the language.
I'm sure you talk to like more experienced seasoned agents who want to get into content, or people who are like, I don't want to work with first time home buyers. I want to work with sellers, move up buyers. If I'm creating content about moving to Tampa, does that kind of turn them off, or does it attract the wrong people?
It depends on what you're talking about, right? So if you're going to talk about things like affordability, right? If you're going to talk about the cheapest places to get a home, if you're going to talk about home buying programs and stuff like that, you're going to attract the person who is in that bucket, right? Again, this isn't a negative, just understanding. I was there. I bought my first home too. I was, scratching it, getting every nickel together to make that happen. I know what that part of life is like, right? So yeah, don't talk to that thing, right? Talk to the thing that you know best.
What if I was a YouTuber who has a pretty big audience and I look at your channel and I go, well, isn't the negative topics view centric? Like, what's your thought on that?
Yeah.
And then there's also the other side of that where agents are like, I don't want to do that type of negative.
I will say this, the only time clickbait is something when you don't deliver on a promise, right? So I will say this unequivocally, I don't put clickbait out there, right? But I do leverage psychological things that I know trigger me personally, right? Like I'm concerned about X, Y, and Z, right? And again, I know my client. I know they're concerned about where they're going to live. I know they're concerned about where their kids are going to go to school. Is it safe? Where are they going to shop? How far is the Target? How far is the Costco? I know these things about my client because I am that client, right? So when I make those titles and thumbnails, what they're not telling you about X, I put truth in there, right? Like, hey, I'm going to tell you things today you can't find on Google, right? That's that little hook, right? Like, oh, okay. And I do. I go with, hey, most people don't want to tell you that you're going to find an alligator in the retention pond, but I'm going to tell you that, right? You're delivering on your promise. And that's the big thing. Like you have to learn how to use the negatives, right? And turn it into something that has value. The reality is no matter where you live in this country, everybody's got something they have to deal with. The question is, do my clients, are they able to overcome those things to receive the lifestyle that they have in their mind? That makes sense.
If you had to think through your idea process in a very simple way, like this is how I come up with the ideas, this is how I plan it, this is what I do, like what would your idea process for videos be?
Oh, awesome, man. Title first. Remember, they're all buckets. So no matter what title I come up with or what title inspires me, guys, some of those titles were handed to me. Other titles I saw on different channels. I was like, oh, how do I position this for real estate? Back to me, when I started this whole thing, it was me watching endless YouTube videos, right? Looking outside of the industry. I looked at a lot of travel channels to begin with. And that was something that really helped me.
That makes a lot of sense.
It really helped me. There's a thumbnail specifically, if you go to like our most popular, where it's me and my wife. And I think it's like 5 years in, would we do it again? Or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And it's a shot of me and her holding hands. And then there's a Florida icon behind us. And that video came from a travel channel. I saw like almost the identical thumbnail from someone else. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. Like, oh, I could just position it this way for real estate. And boom, it was cool because I didn't give her, all we did is got in there. We scripted the front end. But after that, I just asked her questions and she did wife, mom, who lives in Florida, right? That's nothing unique. She just gave people what they wanted. And it was like, boom, it took off, right? And I know that worked because when I was getting the phone calls and the reach outs, hey, we love the video with you and your wife. It was so helpful. I was like, do more of that, right? Like, I don't need to recreate the wheel. Just do more of that.
So talking about the thumbnails, because if we look at like your old thumbnails compared to your new thumbnails, they look completely different.
Yeah, they're bad. So like my first videos. Yeah, absolutely.
And you have a way of like, you have a brand to it now. So like when you look at some of the stuff and you think through like the visual aspect of the new versus the old, like, can you talk through that thought process of how it's designed now versus how it used to be?
Let's just go back to it because it was easy to handle before. I hired my first video editor, like right out of the rip here. I tried to launch this channel. I sat down and I tried to edit my very first video. I recorded my very first video in December of 2020. Recorded it. I was like, whew, got it done. I sat down and I spent probably about 3 hours on the first 3 minutes of editing that. And I closed that. And our channel did not launch till August 21st of the following year. And that happened because I was not equipped. Right. So I hired a video editor in August, brought him on board. And that video editor was my initial thumbnail designer. Don't do this. They're two different people. I had read the YouTube formula from Daryl Eves, right as I was getting started. And Mr. Beast talks about their process and, the kind of rule of thirds thing that they're using in there, and just, go read the book. So you can kind of get a handle on that. But just this whole thing of curiosity, right? Like It's going to be you, with some kind of interesting thing going on with your face. And I learned that from Russell too. Russell's like, just put the most random thing of you up there. He's like, doesn't matter. It creates curiosity. It's going to get a click, right? Okay, that makes sense. And then what is it that this could be about? Right? Like kind of put that in there, some more curiosity there. And then maybe they have a title. Some of them do, some of them don't, and you kind of work through it. But it was definitely junky. I didn't have a font or a color scheme of any sort or anything like that early on. So it was just like spray and pray. Like the ideas were there, but the execution was really, really rough. Every time we'd start to get onto something, it would kind of fall apart. And then we've got a great graphic designer now. And ultimately, it was just like, how do we want this to feel? Right. And the thing I want you to understand is don't, and this absolutes are dangerous, but like, please don't make your brand something you're not. If I can stress that to anybody, right? Especially when it comes to YouTube, because when those clients show up in front of you and they're ready to hire you, that last meeting that you have, that Zoom call, is nothing more than validation of the human you say you were. They think they are in a relationship with you. This is true. And if you show up any other way than who you are there, it's non-congruent, and that's when you're going to lose opportunities. So with the thumbnails, right, if you're showing up on a suit on camera, but you don't ever wear a suit when you meet with clients or you're in the video, don't do that, right? If you're a flip-flops and shorts guy like me, like show up on camera that way, show up on thumbnail that way, right? And it sounds silly, but you'll see people fight that all the time. And I think that's really important. Another thing that I think I could share that is helpful for your audience is like, try to match whatever's on that thumbnail should be in that video in the first 5 seconds. And that's something that I was making lots of mistakes on earlier, but until we implemented that, we didn't get anywhere near close to that 75% retention rate.
When I think back for example, back in like 2019, 5+ years ago, when I started creating thumbnails, my thumbnails were like the title.
Yeah.
And it's like the same exact thing that's in the title was in the thumbnail. Mm-hmm. But what you said, curiosity, I think is the biggest key. It's like, you come from the ad world. It's like the thumbnail is just an ad to get you to read a title. And so can you think through like, okay, here's how, this is the word that I put, this is the background that we put in the title, and like how you kind of like mesh that?
As an example, I'm working through a video that's going to launch this weekend, right? Is Are Florida Homeowners Cursed? Right? Now, it hits the exact thing you were talking about, right? It sounds so negative, but the reality is I'm dealing with people who are going to relocate, and they're going to the web, and this is what people are saying.
Yeah.
So I can fight that, or I can say, oh, well, why don't we just use that, right? Are Florida homeowners cursed? That's a damn good question. Right? So, okay, now how does that translate to a thumbnail? Right? So now we can go a million different directions. I can put that whole title up there, which could work. I don't know until I test it, and then we'll get into testing here in a second. That is a way, but I think what works best in my experience, what we found more success with, is that the thumbnail will either finish the thought or finish the question. There'll be something with a house because we're talking about Florida homeowners. So again, I need to make an association. Is it congruent? Is the title and thumbnail congruent? Start there, right? So there's a house, Florida. I might put Florida homeowners, right? And then on the title, I might just put, are they cursed? That might be the whole title. So I've been playing more and more with less words in the title because I used to keyword stuff the snot out of it, right? Like top 5 neighborhoods in Tampa, Florida, living in Tampa, Florida.
Yeah.
Like I used to stuff the snot, but
and that's a whole conversation.
It is the whole other thing. There's value, right?
Yeah.
But
it's minimal.
Is it on brand?
Yeah.
Does it feel like I want it to feel? These things matter. The other thing I would encourage you to recognize, like if this is your world that you're getting into, is how do you consume? And what I mean by that is because how you consume, that's how everybody else consumes. So you and I don't know about you, but I always see this thumbnail first.
Yep.
Right. And if the thumbnail intrigues me, I may not even read the words on the thumbnail. Subconsciously you consume it all. Right. So you do that. The next thing you're going to do is go to the title.
Yeah. So when you think of the first 30 seconds, because you've mentioned like you're fanatical about the hook, like you have a copywriter, but like that's the one place that you dive super deep on. What have you learned works there?
So again, fulfilling your promise. I've made videos where I didn't do that right away. It was in there, but I didn't do it right away. I had to confirm the click, right? And everybody on YouTube who performs always says that. And
so what does that mean?
Yeah. So making it tangible, right? So using our example today, our Florida homeowners cursed, right? So like in the first 5 seconds, right? I am going to confirm that click. Okay. So and I don't know yet because I haven't gotten back to version 1, but there was probably going to be either a news clip of like, Florida homeowners insurance, like there'll be one of their big fears, which is hurricanes, alligators, right? And homeowners insurance. Shout out. I know mine. I don't know if you know yours, right? Like, but those are the 3 biggest concerns people have in Florida, right? Removing 2 that don't live here, right? So it'll confirm some kind of pain point regarding that, right? And then in that montage, because that's how we usually open up, is like visually, I want to graph it, right? And that visualization needs to confirm the click. So whatever I have in that click has to be in that first 5 seconds. It doesn't have to be the first frame, but it has to be in that first 5 seconds. Oh, they said they were going to do this. They're there. We're no longer clickbait. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then when we get in the hook, that is where I spend all of my time on a video. My copywriter does that now. Guys, don't let that limit you. And I'm always apprehensive when I say that because people are like, somebody's doing work for you. Not at all. The way that it happens is she writes the hook, she writes the transition, which is the story, and then we get into the 3 secrets. Sounds familiar?
Yeah.
Right. So that's interesting. It could be 5, whatever the list is for you, 7, 10, doesn't matter. Right. The point is those are your secrets, right? That you're giving away. But what I'll do is I'll confirm the click visually, then I'll reaffirm the click audibly, right? Hey, our Florida homeowners cursed. Today we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. I'm going to show you why people are saying that, but I'm also going to share with you why I don't think that that's true. You see how I pull that out of the negative? Mm-hmm. Now they know me personally.
Have you found something works in the hook, like big kind of shocking statements, like kind of surprise them, summarize the video in kind of 1 sentence, something like that?
So you're going to reaffirm, right? You're absolutely going to, and then here's what you're going to get. And then I'll tell a story. The stories are what make you real. When people get on with me, they'll say things to me like, Juan, I love your cockroach story. I hate that I'm known for that, but I told a story and it resonated with people, right? Because it's their fear, right? It was fascinating how to do that. They'll say things to me like, Juan, you don't have to shovel sunshine. I used to say that all the time when I first started making videos because it was a reason why I moved here. And now the clients are saying it. Like we get on Zooms and I'm like, oh my God, this works. Like it's just a different game. But like you're reaffirming, right? Here's your prompt. Here's what you're going to get. I think those are the 2 most important things you can do on that initial hook.
Your old scripts used to be a lot more linear, informational.
Yeah.
And now they're a lot more storytelling, personal. And how do you think through that and be like, okay, I want to make this more interesting, engaging, and real by having stories?
I was always attracted to a great storyteller. I think most of us are as human beings. I wouldn't consider myself a great storyteller at all. So when it came to story, I knew I needed to get better. So I just started investing in my education on it, right? I started consuming all the books. So there's this author, Kendra Hall, right? And the book is called Stories That Stick. And we had just moved down here and I was painting someone's house. Right, like this lady's house, and I was listening to this book because I wanted to get better in stories. And she's telling the story of this husband who is being sold on cologne, right? And the person behind the desk is selling him this huge story on like how it's royalty uses this, and like he was just in it, and I was in the story, man. I just remember the feeling that it gave me. I was like, that is incredible. Right? Like, I don't know what this person is doing. And then she told him the story, how they went back the next day to buy it because he came home and tried to sell her on it. And they go back in and the girl behind the counter is like, what are you talking about? None of that's true. Right? But ultimately, he was ready to buy this crazy expensive cologne because of this story. And I was like, oh, yeah, like, I don't do that. Right? I'm just in here doing the thing. And this was pre my YouTube launch, but like, I remember hearing that. And that was like my start of needing to learn more about stories and chasing people down. And again, the coaching and learning more of that end. And this idea of learning to sell the weight of the next thing you're going to share. Right. So like, if I'm going to share a secret, how can I set that up? And then in the first one that compels people to move along the other one, if you just say, well, I went on vacation last year. I went to Hawaii for the first time last year. Like, okay, cool, Juan, you went to Hawaii. But if you tell everybody that was your dream from the time you were a child, you couldn't imagine, right? The opportunity to go, knowing that less than 5% of all people from the United States ever make it to Hawaii, right? What does it start to do? It starts to put weight on this idea of going, right? And then letting people know that while I was there, I got a phone call that no one ever wants to hear, and I lost my mom, right? Like, now, do I need to put that in there? No. But does it make you feel different about my trip to Hawaii?
Yeah.
Way different, right? And there's a whole story behind that. That's real. I just shared real life with you, right? But like, that changes the thing. So our journey to Florida, working in those conversations about the first time I ran into a palmetto bug in my house, right? And how we've been lied to, right? Because a palmetto bug's a roach. You can call it whatever you want, right? The guy who came up with that, or the girl who came up with that fancy marketing term, they're the winners, right? Because that is a roach, and no one else told me a flu either, right? So like, when I had my first experience, like the great outdoors, walking into that room and this bug flies like it's Neo in the Matrix, I'm losing my mind, right? That gets people close to you.
The fact that you do all of this retention, it's like from the thumbnail, problem solution, in the hook, kind of problem solution, transition to a story. Then you have 3 secrets, and you're kind of continually tying each secret together. It's like there's this pattern of like keeping people going. And I feel like that is a big reason of why you have an 8-minute and a 10-minute retention. And then that translate to why you have over 350 appointments. Did you see a dramatic shift in like the conversations with people when you started telling stories?
The dramatic shift there, early was like, I was coming all data, like you said, and it wasn't bringing me a whole lot of opportunity. That when they did come, they were super high C, right? If you're familiar with the DISC chart, but analytical thinkers, engineers, software engineers, like that's where they were. And then as I started to tell stories, I started to pull the wives in, right? And my channel originally skewed super heavy male. It was like 80% of my views were all male.
Interesting.
And then as those stories started to come in, I started to pull the spouse in.
Because I got more into emotion.
Yes. And I started pulling that blend in there. And then they started showing up in the appointments on these Zoom calls and saying, hey, Juan, like, I love your cockroach story, or you don't have to shovel sunshine, which is the saying that I would use, and things like that. They'll bring them up all the time. Or, hey, you were talking about the showing that you were doing with the family, and then the alligator Snoopy, the homeowner named the alligator that was living in the retention pond Snoopy, and how it shut it down. They'll repeat these stories to me. Right. And that is validation. That's relationship. Right. And because they can relate, that's what's happening there.
Like when you, for example, went to the mastermind with Russell Brunson, you're starting to think through like, how does this all start to tie together? Marketing, how does the lead start to flow through? Like, what comes to mind to you on like, these are the things that you need to have in place in your channel, in your video, just in your business for the lead generation process to move through?
Yeah. I'm a believer in a call to action. Okay. Now we have played with this 6 ways from Sunday, right? Like all different types of way, like going too far on the front end and then trying to put it in the middle and then only in the back end. I've been every which way on this. Ultimately, I've come to a middle ground, which I think serves me well in my personal brand, how I feel comfortable delivering. And I think that's important, but just know that I'm a direct response marketer, right? And in order to get a response, you need to direct someone. You don't need to have an elaborate scheme, right? So for me, our primary focus is to drive Zoom calls. And my system is someone reaches out to me, right? I affirm that I'm the person who they're looking for, right? I offer them an opportunity, which is, hey, feel free to call, text, or email me. But the best way for us to connect is via Zoom. I'll open up Google Maps. I'll walk you through the entire area so you know exactly what you're looking for. I'll match the best community to your ideal lifestyle.
So what have you found that works? Where do you put the calls to action? Is it just like, do you tell people to like call, text, click the link, schedule immediately? Like, what's that kind of look like?
Yes. And that's a great question. So I try to drive them to the Zoom call, right? Like, hey, all of our contact information is in the description down below. There's even a link to my calendar where you can schedule a time. We'll jump on Zoom and I'll get you going in the right direction, right? It's gotten like that kind of simple at this point. And that's part of it. The other thing that I'm doing on that hook and transition there is letting people know why, right? Because again, I make this for one person who's new. And this is where people also make mistakes. We didn't talk about this earlier, but like, yes, you're going to have an audience that comes back and they don't need to hear your intro ever again. but you're making this for the new person every time. You're making for this for the person who you have not met yet. And if you just assume that they know who you are or what you do, we're making mistakes, right? Now, getting up and saying, I sold $100 million, that's all nonsense. Nobody cares about that. They only care about what is important to them, right? So when I tell them my story of, hey, we moved 1,200 miles south, and that's how I make my transition. You watch a video, hey, my wife, Kate, and I, we sold up everything we owned. I packed up our family of 5 and moved 1,200 miles south to the greater Tampa Bay area, and we've been loving it ever since. That is a subtle way, right? I'm telling a story of why I'm of value to you.
So do you put that at the beginning or the end or both?
Sometimes I'll put it, I always have a call to action at the back end, always. So that is, and I let them know how they can get hold of us. But what I'm really trying to do is keep them watching the next video. So that typically my last sentence is like, hey, YouTube's going to put 2 videos up here that thinks you're going to love. All right, go ahead and make sure you watch those. And then I sign off with that Tampa Life thing.
When you think about like the system of how you kind of manage leads, like what are the steps from YouTube to client?
Yeah, awesome. So again, we always direct everybody to the Zoom call.
Yep.
That is the priority of the team. Leads come in. So we have a specific phone number set up on YouTube. So if that phone number rings, we already know where it's coming from, right? So I think that's super important. A lot of people just step over that. You should have a way to track your campaigns, whether it's postcards or Facebook or whatever, doesn't matter, right? Like, how do I know this thing is working? So we have a specific phone number that they can call or text. We have a specific email that they can email to, and then we have our calendar, right? Okay. So that Calendly is there, and again, we're always driving back to the calendar anyway, right? So whether it's text or email, great. I'll even hop on with people phone me. Hey, yeah, absolutely, great. Thank you so much for reaching out. I appreciate it. The best way for me to serve you is X, Y, and Z. When we get off this call, I'm going to drop this in the bottom. Schedule your own time. I don't schedule for them because that tells me where they're at, right? So from that point, they come into the calendar. They'll click on whatever time works for them. I have specific times in my calendar. This is important. You're not available all the time. And then from there, they're going to get a questionnaire, a brief questionnaire, right? Are you buying, selling, or renting? Now, I never talk about renting on my channel either. But it doesn't change the fact that we still have people that call out about rentals.
Yep.
I don't serve rentals. We convert 50% of rental calls into purchases. So it's worth every one of them. Okay. All right. Typically, it's the people like, we're going to rent for a year because we're uncomfortable. I can solve that problem. And once we get on the Zoom call, I show them in real time how I solve the problem. They're like, why would I rent? That's $30,000 I'm going to give away. Let's just go buy the house.
Yeah.
Right. I'll come down twice or whatever. So it's small questionnaire. Location, price, those types of things. Like how much money they make, like where they're at, like, hey, I'm going to sell my house. If you know somebody too, like the amount of listing referrals we have sent out on the other side of this, like it's amazing how that works. But the system is really that simple. Once that goes, that fires on automation that puts all of that information inside of our CRM. And then based upon geography, I will now pull in the agent. Okay. So like Tampa's very large area, 3.3 million people. We serve 5 counties, like it's huge, right? So I have agents in Pasco, I have agents in Manatee, and I have agents in Pinellas. And we kind of all work around from that point there. And then I'll bring them in on a Zoom call, right? So I'll edify them. Hey, this is why this person's going to be on this call. They'll send that person a bomb video. Hey, I can't wait to be on the call with you. Juan gave me the invite. Just want to let you know I've already read through everything. Look forward to meeting you guys. That's it. And then we show up on the team call, right? The person's ready to like, okay, cool. This is why this person is here. All right, let's get after it.
Talking about the team, what's that look like now? What's the structure? What are you kind of building into? And then we'll take a step back and see like where should people start too?
So for us, I wanted to build a business that I didn't have to be in. I don't think in any way, shape, or form there's anything wrong with the act of being a real estate agent. But what I recognize very quickly is it's limiting, right? It limits the amount of time I can spend with my family. It limits the amount of time I can spend on things that I love doing, and ultimately was never going to build the ideal life that I had in my mind. In order to do that, there had to be leverage, right? So, and I built businesses in the past. I had a lawn landscape business right out of school, and had crews and all those types of things too. And it also limits your impact, right? It limits the amount of people that you can actually help. So one of the things that I'm fueled by is contributing. I love seeing other people win. And this year, as an example, we brought an agent on. She'll be celebrating 2 years in February. But we brought an agent on who had been in the business for 4 years that had only sold 4 properties. Q1 of 2024, she made more money than she made in all of 2023. And she has married 2 daughters this year and put one of them in college and just bought a new house. And if you can see me smiling, it's because like, this is what this is about, right? Like, yeah, we make money, but we really it's far more rewarding when you're seeing people win. Right. So that's just one example. Marsha's another. I mean, I've had so many wonderful people come into our lives, and I've kept a small, tight team rather than going out and just collecting people. And it's been very rewarding. Right. And the reason that all of this works is because we deliver clients, not leads, to our team members. And I have no interest in serving them. Right. None. I don't want my name on a single contract if I don't have to. Whatever the law says I have to do to keep active is what Juan is a bare minimum. Right. Yeah. And it's not that it's beneath me. It's just not my highest and best use. I'm not the relationship. Like, I struggle with making people feel great. Like, it's just who I am personally. Like, I know that, but I bring people in who are very good at that. And then and I just feed them opportunity and they crushed it.
And that's just goes back to the benefit of the YouTube channels. Like, you bring in the business, they serve the business, and you just keep bringing them more business.
Right.
And it's better than the paid lead generation, which
so much fun. Yeah. And I've gone on there. There's nothing wrong with that. Like that is a pillar of business that works. Yeah. It's proven. Right. Like there's no argument there, but like, what type of client do you want to serve?
Choose your hard.
Amen.
So
100%.
When you look at your team, like, what's the agent versus support versus like the production behind the marketing? What's that kind of structure look like?
Yep. So we have a transaction coordinator who is my wife, who's licensed. She's a contract gangster, does not miss a thing. The agents write their own contracts. They negotiate as a team. So with me and Eric Meldrum is my coaching lead. You know, he handles a lot of this. His business acumen's through the roof. He's great. Eric and my wife handle a majority of the back end business. Eric is a team lead. He coaches. The agents meet with him one-on-one weekly. They do the team meeting with Eric. And then Kate handles all of the back end transaction, making sure all the ducks are in a row. Everybody's in their aces in their places. On the production side, now we have, we call her flight coordinator. She's the maven over there. Like, she knows where everything is at all times, right? Where our content is, where other agents' contents are. We're actually servicing other agents at this point, which has been interesting. It was another, hey, what are you doing? Can you help us type of thing? And I've built a marketing agency before, and that was not the intent here at all. But the very first time we were in a production facility and the production team saw our back end, they're like, dude, that's a full-blown agency. And I was like, I hate that you said that. But agents started asking that we had capacity. So we started with our flight controller. So she handles everything. I do have a graphic designer that's at this point full-time. We need more. That's always the one of the biggest. They're artists, man. They want to create art, not do work. You know, like they want to do their work is the way I would put it. So graphic designer, we had 2 short form editors at this point, strictly for those. And now we are up to, we just hired our 5th long form editor for videos. Our expectation for them is 2 videos a week minimum. If they can do 3, great. But that's the deliverable that we ask in return from them. So that's a team of 10. On the production side. So much bigger than the real estate side. If you're in the business, like it's a lot of work over there.
Yeah. A lot on the creative side.
And you get into this with agents, because I thought the same way too. I was like, oh, you can just bang this out in 2 hours and it'll be done. Right. Like, not a good video. Right. Editing is, to me, it's the worst. Like, I would rather, it's on par with cold calling. But it would just, which punch in the face do I want, right? Like, choosing your heart. Like, so that's why we decided to make that investment. And it takes time, man. Like, it was August 21st, we launched a channel. I didn't get my first text message till Thanksgiving weekend of that year. And it was like, hey, we're interested. And then I text back, and then that person never responded. And I text back for 3 days, and that person there, I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, right? Like, I knew the path worked, but I didn't have any results yet. And then in January, I had a client from New York reach out, pay cash. We closed in 2 weeks. So that check was $8,300. That was my first commission check. 5 months in, no money, right? Investing into an editor, like no money, nothing happened. One video a week, consistent though. Right. And then from that first check to 6 figures was only another 5 months.
So just because I feel like it's going to give perspective, because I feel like people think they have to do a lot, pay a lot, like, and I don't want to ask one particular role, but maybe if you're open to share, like, what is the production, like, monthly overhead kind of rough number look like?
For the whole team or just one?
Just like the creative team, like what does that look like right now? Okay. Just for like perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think I can answer it this way. I think this is the most helpful for anybody watching. We hire VAs overseas. Like that's where we started. You can do it US as well. I don't know everybody has that in their budget. And I know there's arguments for and against, but at the end of the day, man, we've helped 3 people buy houses over there. So like, I know what we do matters, and I'm good with that. I would love to hire people here. We do have roles. We're hiring a sales manager now that's going to live here in Tampa with me. And then we're also going to hire a marketing director that's going to live here in Tampa with me too. So like all of that has led to this, right?
Exactly.
But in terms of expense, I want to make sure we caution about this. That was an investment, right? Like this has paid me bananas money. Right. When you look at 1.2 million in GCI over the 270 videos, do the math. But for them, you can expect to pay somewhere between $4 and $12 an hour for a video editor overseas or out of country on that end. Once you come over to the stateside, it definitely gets more expensive. Yeah. Quality of work, arguable. Some of them are going to be great. There's just not as good. You need to have a process when you're hiring people for those roles. And I think a lot of the times that's where you make mistakes. But I learned that early in the game, like, hey, have a real good system for what you want. And anybody who can edit will basically show up in front of you already at 80%. Yeah. Right. Like if they've got any kind of skills, we have to get them that other 20. That's never going to happen without your input. And I think that's where a lot of people make mistakes. They just assume that they're going to come in and like, they know everything about first of all, most people unless you're going to hire local and then you're going to pay out the nose, right? Most people don't know what it is about you. They don't understand the nuances. Like, they can Google, they're just Googling things. So like there has to be conversations, communication about what that looks like. What do you want your brand to feel like, right? If you can get closer to the feel up front, you will both grow together. Right? Because those first 100 videos are going to suck. Right? They're just not going to be great. Again, you're going to get better. But if you can get close to on brand up front and then make the adjustments, by the time you hit your stride, your editor will be right there with you.
So editor, graphic designer, copywriter, are they all overseas?
Yes.
That might surprise people. The copywriters are overseas.
Oh, yeah. Well, Google works. Right. At this point, AI is leveraged a ton. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, like, I don't care how she's coming up with the content. I care that it's done. I hired the result, not the process.
It sounds like you started with like an editor and then a graphic designer for thumbnails.
That was the next hire.
And then it kind of progressed from there.
Correct. Copywriter was last.
Okay.
Yep. We went short form too. We went heavy in short form for a while. Did not produce it works, but it does not work like YouTube.
Yeah.
So the resources there are just, that is an awareness. Like if you look at it in terms of like campaigns, if you go to the marketing nerd side, like for us, short form is nothing more than awareness and validation.
Funnel.
That's it. Right.
Yeah.
Is this person who they say they are? Are they doing the thing? Right. Like, and you stay active in front of it. And Instagram stories for me has always been a big driver. Instagram is my number 2 in terms of lead conversion. We don't do any paid right now. It's been a few years since we've done that. But it's basically just been YouTube and then Instagram. And a lot of, at this point, I've been in the business for 12 years. So you can fall into 25 pieces of businesses, just by having that, being in the business that long, which is huge. But when you start out that way, you're not there.
Was it a tough lesson to learn that short form wasn't what you thought it could be compared to YouTube?
No, because I know it can, but in all fairness, I have not put the time and energy into that because of where we're at with YouTube, right? I know that there are creators out there. I mean, locally here in Tampa, you look at somebody like Senya, right?
She's just killing it.
She's doing very well on Instagram. She's built her whole business on this is what you get for, right? Which is not, she didn't create that, right? But she's crushing it, right? She's crushing it with that. It works, right? That's not a question, but question is, I can't do YouTube and I have to focus on what it is. And for me, I went long form because what I know is that's the shortest path to build relationship. Short form is great, right? But that's an entertainment platform that is starting to be, people are going to TikTok more for search. That is starting to occur for sure, but we're still very much on the front end of that. And again, building relationships 7, 15, even 60 seconds at a time, 10, 15, 20 pieces of content to make that work doesn't make sense.
I mean, if you just divide 8 minutes by 15 seconds, you have to create 32 videos to get the same amount.
It's a long way to get there. It works, right? But like for me, the math just didn't math.
Yeah, 100% agree. It can be applied to any business. And kind of talking about that, you've had multiple businesses. You got into real estate after owning multiple, and you moved down here with kids, a wife. Owning a business is kind of like a roller coaster. There's ups, there's downs, there's highs, and there's lows.
And then there's lunch. Yeah.
Yeah. But ultimately, it's the failures and the lows that help shape who we are today. So as a business owner, as a father, as a husband, can you talk about like one, we'll call it low, it doesn't have to be a failure, that changed who you are and made you who you are today?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this whole thing that you're seeing in front of this experiment right now came out of one of those failures. In 2017, I lost my corporate position as a business development manager for the largest Anheuser-Busch wholesaler in the state of Michigan. Knew it was coming, right? AB was down, and whenever Bud Light is not selling, you're in trouble. Now, I ran the craft division of our business, but you're talking about $13 million versus $300 million. So, great, you guys made us $2 million, but we're hemorrhaging money over here. So the writing was on the wall. I knew it was coming. And my role had become redundant. I had trained my replacement. Like, you could see it a mile away. And I remember getting out of that, our strategic planning meeting in November. We were in Kalamazoo, and I left and I called Kate and I said, hey, I need you to get done whatever needs to get done on the insurance side with kids. And I called my ex-wife. And same conversation with her. She's like, yeah, right. I was like, all right, I'm telling you right now. And a week later, they pulled me out on a Monday. That's how you know how bad things are, right? No one gets let go on Monday, all right? So Mondays are our team meetings with, management and everything, and they can get me out of there. But that was the thing that gave me permission, right? Our real estate practice had already been winning there, right? That was part of the reason I was going to get let go too, because I was never going to be the company man. All right, I was always like, and that's okay. I had a great time. I'm never going to speak ill of that. I've learned a lot of really good things that I apply to my business now. But that forced me in a situation of like, well, what is next, right? Real estate was doing well, but like I had to replace a healthy income, company car, like all the things, right? Like, so you had to do those. But it gave me, okay, now's our time. Now's our chance. So I spent that winter getting my license here in Florida, just preparing, getting set up. And then we moved down, and when we moved down here, we really weren't in position financially to make that happen. I was still selling back in Michigan, but I walked away from my brokerage partnership, and I was doing everything via Zoom. And like, I'm not the guy here to tell you, like, I was so far ahead. Like, I was just managing, right? And it was just keeping the lights on and like our situation at home. But like, I definitely had took a risk. And then when COVID came, the state of Michigan decided that real estate was non-essential. And at that same time, I was running a marketing agency, and I decided to close the doors on that agency. So we went from doing well enough to no income in our house for 93 days during a global pandemic when you don't know what the future is going to look like. So that was the catalyst for this next evolution of our business. I got my license out of holding, started a Facebook page, started running ads, got a couple clients during COVID and like started to get the thing up and running. But what that led me to was like, I need to learn this. If I'm going to be doing this down here, I can't compete with these guys. I've never lived here. They're going to talk about things that I don't understand. So I knew I needed to do that. And there was an episode of Bigger Pockets that I remember listening to. And the guy's like, if I was ever dropped off into a new market, I would start driving Uber right away. And I was like, oh, I can get paid to go get my education. So I jumped in an Uber 3 nights a week. During the middle of COVID, people wearing masks and stuff. But like, I took my phone, man, and I just started documenting, right? I would Google when I dropped the client off, I'd Google where I'm at. Okay, cool. Tell me about this place. And then I would literally get out, face the phone, right? Just start capturing content. And that's what got me that little bit of bank to when I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go ahead and start doing YouTube. And that's really where it all kicked off. Right. So it's been a journey, but that was scary. 93 days with no income.
Yeah.
Dude, it was nuts. Right.
I couldn't imagine as like a father and moving down here, like must've been tough.
It was interesting. I think if you asked my wife, she would say something different, but like, it was definitely interesting. But I knew there was a path, right? Like the thing about business that is cool, whether it's in real estate or any other industry, is at the end of the day, there's a proven path. The question is, like you said, what are you going to choose? What is most interesting to you? And if you want success, like real big success, and I'm not saying that I've arrived, I don't think we're successful in that respect. In my mind, we're scratching the surface of what is possible, right? But if you want to have those successes, understand, right? The more something the more production something has the ability to give you, the higher the cost, right? And whether that's ignorance, information, accountability, whatever it is, right? If it was easy, we would all have it. There's a reason why most real estate agents make 40 grand or whatever the number is, right? I can't even wrap my mind around that. And we've had the best years 3 years in a row, not because I'm smart, right? It's because we are just following the path, right? There are people who have done it in front of me, Posick, Jeremy Knight. I mean, go down the list of people who have those successes, right? Like, but there's a path here, just like door knocking, just like cold calling.
Yeah. So kind of looking at, you spend time with some of the biggest YouTubers, some of the biggest marketers, Russell Brunson's, like what's next? Like, where's your head at? Like, what are you kind of like looking at? Whether it's a platform, whether it's like this is how we're building the team, or like this is where we're moving. Oh, that's awesome. For us, I've always known that media was the focus, right? So like the thing I didn't mention earlier is like, I'm a marketer who practices real estate, right? And ultimately my belief system, even back to 2017, once Facebook started doing like Facebook Live and everybody would show up, I knew then that you would have to be a media company in the future. Now, I'm not sitting here like banging my chest. Like I just knew that was going to be a huge component of what we would be doing in the future. It just made sense, right? Like this is the fastest way to connect with people. I'm not going to go out and chisel stones when I got a direct line, right? So that is what I would say, like in terms of how I thought process. So my mind's always been like, what is the next part of that? How do I get to that? So YouTube was a natural evolution, right? The social channels, all a natural evolution on how to accomplish that. So for us, that media angle, I think Ken has done a really good job of building a model of what that could look like for real estate agents, right? The whole Orlando Real thing and the Posick group and how they tie them together. I think he's done an excellent job. And I tried that, but we didn't have the right people in place and it was a mess. So who first, not how. Right. That's the shortcut. Who, not how, right? There's a great book and it's true.